Ladies and gentlemen, it is time again. It is time for adults to talk about cool stuff. This is ATACS episode number 27. It is December. In fact, it is December 2nd, 2017. We are rapidly approaching the end of 2017, but before we get there, we're going to talk about some video games and some things like that. I am your host, Paul from Atlanta. Joining me today is Mr. Flex from Raleigh, North Carolina. Hello, Flex.
Hello, Paul.
How are you?
I'm great.
Have you decorated your Christmas tree?
No, wait. I'm supposed to get a Christmas tree?
Do you have a Christmas tree?
What is a Christmas tree?
You need to get a Christmas tree and put things on it.
My apartment looks the same as it does every other day of the year.
Well, moving away from the Grinch, who has no Christmas spirit, Mr. Nate from Wendell, North Carolina. How are you, Nate?
I'm pretty good. I have not put up a tree yet.
What is wrong with you people?
Your cat would just knock it over anyway.
Yeah, a tree is a tricky prospect in my household, so it'll probably happen, but we haven't done it yet.
All right, so moving away from the two Grinches,
we're 0 for 2 on Christmas trees.
Steph, can you please jump in here and tell these people how many Christmas trees currently exist in our house?
In our house, we currently have 3 operational trees and 2 very tiny trees that don't have lights on them.
Well, so, that makes up for me and Nate, right?
Yeah, we're good.
We're covered.
The Christmas spirit is alive and well here.
Yeah. So we have a grown-up Christmas tree upstairs that's white lights and sophisticated ornaments, and then downstairs we've got like Mario ornaments and
spaceships.
Yeah. It's great.
It's fairly exciting. We also have 2 Charlie Brown Christmas trees because you have to have more than one.
Oh yeah, we do. So is that 7 trees, 6 trees?
You know what? We're gonna lose count, and Will's gonna go to sleep by the time that we actually get there. So, Mr. Will from Greenville, North Carolina, welcome to the Christmas special of ATACS.
Christmas.
So, I'm guessing that you have no trees up as well.
My wife put up a tree.
All right, baby. Somebody else has a tree that's not just Steph and I. That's amazing.
Yeah, and I put exactly 1 ornament on it.
Okay, well that's
It was a place that was too high for her to reach.
Was it the top? Was it the star? Did you put the star on the tree?
It was, I think it was like a donkey, but it's not on the top. It's like it's just.
So did she tell you where to put it and you just obliged?
Yeah. She was like, William, I can't reach this spot. And I said, okay, what do you want me to put there? And she's like, this donkey. And so I did that.
Wow. And that sounds amazing. So
and it got done,
and it got done. So we have we have the members of this panel. We have more Christmas trees than people on this panel. So Steph and I are doing what we're supposed to. But before we get into video games and all of the other fun stuff, we are going to reveal our Secret Santa list. So last ATACS, we decided to do a Secret Santa. And since it was Steph's idea, I'm going to throw it over to her so she can talk about what we were planning on doing and what we did. Steph, you want to talk about that?
So yeah, I guess it's not too complicated. I kind of whined and nagged until everyone agreed to do the Secret Santa.
It didn't take much.
It really didn't. So we haven't really come up with any concrete rules aside from we pulled names. And you had to buy the game or a game for the person's whose name you got paired up with. And that's really it. Because we decided that we don't really know. It depends on the games that people bought, what kind of rules we'll need to come up with. But I'm really excited to see if people decided to buy games for the other person that they would really like or that they would hate. I'm kind of excited to see which way this goes.
We'll find out who is the biggest troll.
We will certainly find that out. And Mr. Flex, you have written down in front of you who bought who for what. Do you want to run through that real quick for us?
Who bought who for what?
I bought Will for $1.
He's really good at putting donkeys on trees.
$2.
I bought Nate for Portal 1.
So what I have written down here is that Paul bought something for everyone else, and that's all I wrote.
Oh, fantastic.
Thanks, Paul.
Well, several of you are going to be very disappointed.
Oh, no.
Or more accurately, Paul just bought a game for Nate.
That is correct.
And then Nate bought a game for me. I bought a game for Steph. Steph bought a game for Will, and Will bought a game for Paul.
All
Does
right.
does that jive with what everyone remembers?
I didn't write it
That's-
down, so I wouldn't know. So
That's
yeah.
what I had. That's
Yeah.
what I
Sounds
had.
like a circle.
Yeah.
Yep.
So who would like to go first? I guess if we have no volunteers, then I suppose I will.
Go for it.
Go for
All right. So Nate, I have a couple of questions for you.
it. Okay.
How do you generally feel about the position of the President of the United States?
Oh boy.
Here's an easier question. What do you think about superpowers?
Now I'm all depressed, Paul.
I was more the position, but
How
know
do you
what I
feel
mean.
about Aerosmith?
Okay. I mean,
so-
superpowers are cool.
All right, so we got superpowers. What about aliens? What do you think about aliens?
I'm not really pro or con aliens. I'm pretty neutral on aliens, I guess.
Well, I got you something that has all of these things that I think
Okay.
that I think you'll enjoy very much. You will be receiving at 5:30 p.m.
Uh-huh.
Saints Row 4 Game of the Century Edition,
Okay, great.
including the Enter the Dominatrix, the Anime Pack, the Bling Bling Pack, the College Days Pack, and it just keeps going down the list. There's a whole bunch of DLC to go with this. So I
Excellent.
think I believe that you played Saints Row 3 for a bit, right?
I did.
So Saints Row 4 is basically Saints Row 3, but with powers. So I think you'll probably enjoy this one at least a little bit.
Nice.
And it is an open world game for anyone that is not familiar with the franchise. It's a little ridiculous. It's pretty humorous. I think that the main story, if you don't do a whole bunch of the side stuff, is probably about 15 to 20 hours.
Okay.
And
I
that's
was
kind
going
of
to ask if we want to come up with rules now as we talk about them, or just do that after the podcast.
well, I mean,
Off air.
at least for this particular one, for me, I would like Nate to play through the main story arc, not necessarily the DLC stuff.
Right.
Just the main stock game. That's what I'd really like for you to see.
I will play through the main story, and if there is a DLC that is not super long that you think is definitely worth me seeing, then I will try to do that as well.
All right.
Nice.
We want to just go around the circle, so now Nate
Yeah.
picks it up.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Let's do that. All right. So I had Flex, and that's you.
That's me, right?
Right.
So, yeah, I probably had the same dilemma that everybody had with this, which is, do I get you something that you'll just hate and make you play it and laugh? And I decided to not go that route.
All right. Well, I thought you would go that route, so I was prepared. I was braced.
I don't know what you'll think of this, but it's kind of my jokey pick, but also keeping in mind your time constraints. I know you have a lot of games you always want to get to, and I also did you a solid and picked a 2017 game.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
Oh, wow.
you will be getting and playing Space Plan.
Space Plan.
What?
All right. I know nothing about Space Plan.
It's a clicker.
Oh, boy.
It's a fun one.
Great.
So I picked
I
something
just got
that
this
you
new
probably
notification
don't like, but
I'm gifted Space Plan.
it's the best version of the thing you don't like. So it's not a complete troll pick.
Well, I mean, at least it's the best.
Yes.
I don't understand. Oh, it's one of those.
That's actually a really inspired pick.
So there you go. Merry Christmas.
I've just added Space Plan to my library.
All right.
Well, congratulations.
Oh man.
Nice.
So is there a particular amount of Space Plan I should play, or
Forever.
There is an ending, so play to the ending. It's like
okay?
a handful of hours. It's not super long.
Gotcha.
I mean,
All right.
depends on how you count hours when playing a clicker.
Right.
So I don't know if this is a spoiler, but going through the comments underneath the game information is, quote, "I always dreamed of throwing a potato into space for science. Thank you."
Uh-huh.
So-
That's about on par with the level of writing and humor in this game.
Comical, not so serious, orbital potato simulator. I can't
Yep.
wait to hear the review for this one.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right, Flex.
This is great. All right, so I was getting a game for Steph,
All right.
and I had a lot of good ideas. and I pestered Paul with questions of, has Steph played this game? Has Steph played this game? You almost got XCOM, Steph, by the way.
Oh God, that's that alien thing, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's the alien thing. But what I ended up going with is Nestor's Funky Bowling for the Virtual Boy.
What?
Just kidding.
Oh. I was Google searching like, what the hell? I did Wii bowling. Is that like that?
It's the same thing.
You should check your mailbox. There's a Virtual Boy in there. No, I'm just kidding.
No, thank you.
No, what I actually settled on is a game called Racketeer: An Item Shop's Tale.
Yeah.
Oh, is that the game where you're the merchant?
Yes. So you basically You basically play the item shop owner in a JRPG.
Oh my gosh, I've heard about that game. I'm really excited.
Yeah. So you're like, it's like a kind of a simulation game where you're running an item shop.
Oh,
and like
that is
all
so
these
perfect.
like very stereotypical Dragon Quest style people like come in and are buying swords and shields and stuff.
Oh, I'm in love. That is an awesome pick.
I hope you enjoy. And I forget the exact structure of the game, but like you go through a certain period of time, and like your goal is to reach like a certain amount of money by that period of time. And I don't remember that being too long, so I would say go through one run of that, and you may or may not reach the goal. When I did it, I didn't reach the goal, and then there's like a new game plus, and it's like easier to reach the goal if you keep going. But if you don't want to do like another round, I think one round's good.
I'm excited. I'm really glad it's not XCOM. I'm not saying XCOM's not a good game. It's just it is not on like my wish list or nothing.
Yeah. My debate was like whether to go, like how far to go outside of your comfort zone or not.
I don't know. This being a merchant sounds right in my comfort zone. That's exciting.
Yeah,
I get to be an NPC. NPC the game.
Yay!
But yeah, I will be very curious to see what you think of it.
Awesome. Excited. All right, so I guess it's my turn.
Yep.
I got to pick a game for Will.
I'm bracing.
Here it comes.
So I'm actually really disappointed in myself. I didn't go trolly at all.
Okay.
But I do want you to know that I was gonna get you Danganronpa.
Danganronpa?
My God, I wish you had gotten
Danganronpa.
Oh my
so
God.
perfect.
Yeah, I'm really sad. But yeah, because man, that is the anime murder game, and it's But I decided to get you. I don't know. I did a lot of research into a bunch of games. Another one I was thinking about was Franbo, which is a.
Yeah, I've played Franbo.
Did you really?
But I have
Did you
not
like
played Danganronpas.
Danganronpas.
Yeah, I played it on GOG. That's why it wasn't on my Steam list. So.
Oh, okay. Did you actually like it?
It was a little too adventure gamey, maybe.
Oh, okay.
But yeah.
Well, I got you a game about CRT monitors.
Whoa.
Called a Stories Untold.
Huh.
And
I've heard of this.
yeah, it kind of reminded me of the Big Brother game that you just played.
Hey, this looks cool.
Yeah, thank you. I'm pretty proud of myself.
All right.
So
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah,
There
I've
you
heard
go.
good things about that one.
I think
Yeah.
you get to uncover a mystery sitting at your computer or something. Oh.
That sounds like a thing I need to do.
Got to uncover all the mysteries.
Yeah. Holla. Okay.
Yeah. But for New Year's you might get Danganronpa.
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 You get to fight a murder teddy bear, and yeah.
Yeah. And
Monokuma the best.
Yeah.
so I guess is there an amount of this? I guess it's relatively is it relatively brief or
The reviews I read said that it was between 8 and 10 hours, so it
Okay.
wasn't a very long game.
solid.
Yeah.
All right. So I know Paul very well for a long time. So I guess like he knows all of my favorite games, and I feel like he's probably heard my pitches, you know? So basically what I did is went with something like, I guess like everybody did, which is, it's good to know that we're all like real kind people, you know? We went with things that we thought the other person would genuinely like.
Except for Nate.
Yeah.
So is Nate the biggest troll?
We found the asshole of the group.
But yeah, so I went with the game. I had looked at a lot of tags of the games that Paul seems to really dig on. And I got him Dungeons 3, which I have never played.
3.
It's called Dungeons 3. I have never played it, but it looks like basically a fun version, maybe of the games that Paul plays all the time.
Fun version.
It looks like Diablo, doesn't it?
So basically, it's a spiritual kind of in the spiritual tradition of like Dungeon Master. So you create this sort of underground dungeon, and you can see in the video here on the Steam pages, you're always whacking these little guys and making them do stuff for you. And I think you have like battles to fight on the surface, but then underneath the surface, you're kind of jamming out and like creating new, I don't know, monsters and units and stuff. So it seemed like a good time.
All right.
And so you can play as much of that as you want to play of that, because I don't really know what it ends up looking like.
Well, but, I certainly like the idea of being an evil overlord, so it's pretty good there.
Yeah. I think you had some. It looks like the top ones are like simulation, management, fantasy. So those seem like Paul things. So yeah, that's where we landed.
We're putting the Steam system to the test.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, that's awesome. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
So I have a thing to download now. That's awesome. So we're gonna play these for the next couple of weeks ish, a little more than that. And I think we had decided that we would report back on what was it? Maybe the first ATACS in January, so like the 13th.
Yeah, whatever the first one after Game of the Year is.
Yeah.
So
we
that
need
gives
to recover from that.
Yeah, that gives us all some time to go and play these. So we probably won't hear a ton about it right soon, but we've given everyone a little bit of time to just go and experience the full breadth and beauty of everything that we have given to each other, and sounds like we did pretty well.
It might be difficult for Steph to find the virtual boy, so it's good that we give her a month. You know what I mean?
Those are hard to find nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, but Nestor's bowling is quite funky.
It is quite funky.
I do like that all of us seem to have like a troll pick, and then what we actually got, the person, except for Nate.
I took the troll pick and then like made it a little nicer.
Yeah.
I could have just gotten you a straight up clicker.
You should have just gotten time clickers.
Yeah.
You could just go to cookieclicker.com or whatever.
Yeah, just send you a link to Cookie Clicker.
Done.
I told Paul he should have gotten Nate YouTuber's Life.
What?
And I decided that I wanted Nate to have fun instead, mindless fun, the most mindless fun. So I got him that instead.
Sounds great.
So speaking of video games, I guess we're gonna get into that little business here. So I guess Mr. Flex, we'll start with you. What's been on your game playing radar here in the recent past?
Mm-hmm. So I've played 2 games since our last podcast, from start to finish. One of them short, one of them long. I'll start with the shorter one, which is going to be very hard to talk about for spoilery reasons. But I'll talk about it quickly. It's a game called Doki Doki Literature Club.
Okay, I've heard a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a strange one. It is a free game on Steam, and it is it presents itself as a very stereotypical dating, like Japanese dating sim. Like,
yes.
if you go look at the Steam page, like that's what it looks like. Which is not like, I don't think I've ever played one of those. So like, that's not a type of game I usually play. But I had like, I don't know, over the past month plus, like I kept seeing these whispers around you know, the dark corners of the internet that I visit that were like, that were like, yo, this game is not what it seems. Like, people should check it out. I was like, okay, sure. Like, it's free. It's like 4 or 5 hours long. Let me just take a look. And they were right. That game is not what it looks like. Probably the best comparison is like almost in a way like a Frog Fractions kind of thing, where like it looks like, because you know Frog Fractions looks like it's an 80s or early 90s era like math, like fractional education game, and then at some point it subverts that entirely and it's something else for the rest of the time. And that's pretty much what this does. Is it flips a switch like halfway through, and from there, and I'm not going to get spoilery, but what, like, I feel like I would call that game a psychological horror game.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, that game goes to some dark places.
Yes.
Like, and I don't know what they are. I didn't read too much into it. I just saw that it was like, you know, it looks like one of those dating sims, and then it all of a sudden is real bad.
Yeah. And it's not like a horror game it's not like a horror game in the way you'd think of like a Resident Evil or something like that. Like, it is like way more psychological and just like messes with your head, and it does like fourth wall breaking stuff too, and becomes very meta as well. And what's interesting about it is it's effective as a horror game because it subverts expectation.
Gotcha.
And I've seen some articles saying it's like one of the best horror games in recent years because it's not what you expect.
Okay.
So like by that, and I'm not going to say any more for spoiler reasons. Like if anyone has any questions, like I'll try and answer them. But like it's a game that like is most enjoyable if you know nothing about it going in.
I mean, my only real question is it something you feel like is definitely worth seeing?
I enjoyed seeing it, yes.
Okay.
Especially because it's free.
Yeah.
I won't say I loved it. It was something that I more enjoyed, like, for the experience of seeing it rather than, like, I don't know that I actually enjoyed playing it, if that makes sense. Yeah. But it was one of those things that, like, I finished going through it and I was like, okay, like, that was a neat thing to see. I almost came out of it feeling like how I felt about, this might sound really weird at first, but I almost felt coming out of it how I felt coming out of games like the Stanley Parable or Undertale, where it was like, I didn't necessarily enjoy playing either of those games, but like they were doing interesting things, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And like the way they subverted what was going on. So like, I definitely felt it was worth seeing. Like, I'm glad I went through it.
How long did it take you to go through it?
It was probably like 5-ish hours.
Okay.
I did it in one evening.
Yeah.
It was probably, I would guess, around 5 hours. And I think there are like other endings that I didn't get that you could push further with if you wanted to. But I got like, I ended up seeing quote unquote like the main ending.
Okay. And you do recommend it, even though you can't really talk about the specifics because that would kind of ruin it? Yeah.
Okay. And I've maybe said a little too much, but it's also one of those things that if I just say, hey, it looks like a Japanese dating sim, but it's not, I don't think that's really enough.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Yeah. So, yeah. I think it was a neat, interesting thing. And I actually think Will would probably like it if you could get through like the opening hour and a half that is, before it flips the switch. And yeah, I think Nate, you would probably find it interesting too.
Yeah, I'll probably try to check it out in the next couple weeks if I get a chance to.
Yeah, it's quite something. I will be curious to talk to anyone else if they play it. It's a weird one. And it's free.
Yeah, that helps.
Oh, I didn't realize it was free.
Yep, it is free on Steam. Just go type Doki Doki Literature Club on Steam, and there it is.
Huh. I might actually go get that then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's It does some things.
Right.
Also, none of you here, I know this would bother, but just to make sure I say it, like the game gives some like cautionary warnings up front, and take those seriously because it's not it's not lying to you.
Okay.
Oh boy.
Yeah, but it's like if you're sensitive or like get disturbed easily, or I forget the exact wording, but it has some warnings that you should take to heart. So just to throw that out there.
Okay, that's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
So you said that you finished 2 games. What was the other one?
Yes, the other one is also a weird game. And that is Nier Automata.
Aha! You finished it.
Automata. Yes, I started and finished Nier, and when I say finished, I mean I finished all 5. I got all 5 of the story endings.
Nice.
Okay.
So for anyone not familiar with that game structure, like it does have 26 endings, 1 for each letter of the alphabet, but only endings A through E are quote unquote story endings. The other ones are mostly like ad or joke endings.
Yeah.
So like I got one of the joke endings by, so your equipment in that game is like chips because you're an Android.
Mm-hmm.
So like an example of one of the joke endings is you have this OS chip that doesn't do anything, but if you take it off, you uninstall your OS chip, then you die. So that's one of the endings, for example.
Yep.
So
that's funny.
That's what a lot of the endings are like. They're just very goofy things like that. But I did get all 5 of the story endings, which involved playing through 3 different routes.
All right.
Which when this game first came out and people were talking about it, they were like, "Oh, you have to play through the game multiple times to get different endings." And after playing it, I don't feel like that's quite accurate. I feel like the 3 routes are 3 different like chapters of this big story.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's really just one story that has 3 distinct chapters to it.
Yeah. For sure.
And it's a game that like if you're going to play it, like you want to see all 3 of those chapters. It's not like, oh, I did one route and that's one playthrough. No, it's like that's just one chapter.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, overall I liked it. There are things I didn't like about it. There are things I really liked about it. I don't really know where to begin talking about it because it's a weird game that's kind of all over the place.
Well, I mean, I guess one of the things that I kind of like you to talk about is I've seen a couple of opinions float around, and just full disclosure, Steph and I bought the game. She played it for like maybe 2 or 3 hours, if that long, and was like, no thank you, and I just never got interested in it. So that's the extent of how much we played it in this household. But one of the things that I saw as a criticism of it is that, you know, the gameplay is just kind of bland and blasé. Did the story get interesting in time to kind of have you push through that, or was it something that you were kind of hooked on the story a lot further in?
Yeah, that's a good question and probably a good way to frame this in general. Because the combat is, for me, I found it pretty rote, and I've played this is developed by Platinum Games, and I've played a number of their games, and I still think their best games are probably the Bayonetta games. And especially from a combat point of view, like I don't think the combat here is as strong as Bayonetta's combat. I don't know. Would you agree with that, Nate?
Yeah, for sure. It just doesn't feel quite as tight or balanced as a lot of their other action games, especially the Bayonettas.
Yeah. That said, it's not necessarily bad. It's just it's very straightforward.
Yeah, it's a little mashy, right? Like,
yeah, it is pretty mashy. I mean, there is a dodge that's pretty flashy and works, and you also have to juggle like shooting bullets from your bot with close range sword attacks. So I mean, there's a little bit of like flexibility and variety in there, but for the most part, it is fairly mashy, and the enemies don't really change that much either. Mm-hmm. Throughout the game. So like I felt like it could have used a little more nuance there, but like I said, it wasn't bad, and like I probably didn't get tired to it until, I don't know, maybe halfway through Route B or so.
Yeah.
So like it carried it enough, and there are also like other types of gameplay that work their way in. Like it is a platinum game, so there has to be like a Space Harrier style sequence.
Nice.
Which actually happens multiple times. And there's also like top down or side scrolling like shooter style, like think of like a Gradius or something.
Okay.
There's that kind of stuff. There's the hacking mini game, which you end up doing a lot later in the game, is like a twin stick dual joystick shooter. So like it kind of bounces around a lot with different stuff. So it does. I think that helps the variety a little bit, because like if you're just playing through the story, like you're constantly switching up the stuff you're engaging with.
Right.
I think that helped keep it fresher as well. And the one thing they do really well with a lot of that stuff is I think this game has some really strong set pieces.
Okay.
I'll just give one example where you're basically fighting this giant robot kaiju.
Okay.
And it switches back and forth between ground combat and then like the Gradius style stuff or the Space Harrier style stuff. And like the camera work as it transitions between all that is really cool.
Okay.
So I think it does some really good stuff with like the set pieces and the camera work and the transitions between different scenarios.
Yeah, they do those big scenarios pretty well, and the music plays into that a lot too.
Yes. Which is another that's actually might be my favorite thing in this game is the soundtrack.
Yeah.
I think it's incredible.
It is really good.
Yeah, it's Nate and I were joking earlier this year that like Persona 5 was like the runaway best soundtrack of the year, but I don't know, Nier's is closer than I would have expected anything could be. It's a really strong soundtrack, and it fits like the tone and the mood of that game so well, and it sounds kind of like a lot of those songs sound kind of robotic in a way that's oddly fitting.
Mm-hmm.
And you wouldn't think it would work, but it does. It's really good stuff. So yeah, as you play through the main story, like it introduces a lot of those set pieces that work really well from like a presentation and then like a style standpoint. I ended up not doing a lot of the side quests because I thought a lot of those, like the few I did, I thought were pretty bad. I think a lot of them were like MMO style, like go collect X number of this item or go kill some robots.
Go find 10 batteries. Go kill 7 robots.
Yeah, it was a lot of that stuff, which just seems really pointless and rote. I think I've like read and listened to some stuff since I finished the game, and it sounds like some of those side quests might have had some decent story moments, but like once I did a few of them, I was like, I'm not going to engage with that style of quests. And if I had done all that, I would have probably gotten way more tired of the combat.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think I didn't do all of the side stuff for sure, but the stuff I did had some little like moments or pieces of writing that kind of add on to the lore or the tone of the game, but I didn't encounter anything that I felt like was essential.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of the impression I got, is they're nice little moments here and there that kind of reinforce the game's themes, but yeah, none of it seemed essential.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much what it was, at least the stuff. There may be like a couple side quests that people really like, and I just don't know because I didn't really look into it that much, but it seemed like it was a lot of just sort of expanding and reinforcing the themes of that game, which I think when people talk about the story of Nier Automata or Automata or whatever, I think a lot of people praise the story very heavily, but I think what they're really trying to praise is like the theme and tone that game presents. Yeah,
and that is, I think, ultimately what carried me through the game. Like once I started getting tired of the combat, I started becoming more invested in the theme of the game. And when Paul was asking like what was carrying me towards the end, like by the end of Route B, like that's 100% what was carrying me, is I wanted to see where this game went with its story stuff and its themes and all of that. And it's an interesting game story because it's not like, it's funny, we joke about it being anime, and it is in some ways, but it's also like strangely subdued and contemplative.
Yeah.
It's not what you, like, it's not like Final Fantasy VII style anime where you have giant weapons firing laser beams across the planet and like Sephiroth slicing up meteors with his sword or whatever. Like, it's not that kind of anime.
Yeah.
It's a lot more subtle and like, I don't know. It's hard to describe, but it's like there aren't like big flashy. I mean, there are big set piece moments from like, you know, combat things that are going on, but it's like
there's totally big flashy stuff going on, and there's totally like, you know, you get behind the characters and see their sort of reactions and how they move through everything. But you're right that it is, I think what makes that game strong, or it makes its narrative strong, is the continued sense that like, oh, these are you know, these big set piece moments are not actually what's important here. It's about what is actually happening inside the heads of the main characters, and like, what does this mean for larger questions at play here?
Yeah, like there was a big story revelation near the end of Route B, and it wasn't presented in a flashy way. Like, it wasn't like really forced. Like, it didn't feel forced. It just felt like this thing happened. This is a really revelatory thing for the characters involved. And then the game continued. But that thing that happened was very major, and it changed the tone of the game from there, even if they didn't turn it into a flashy scene.
Yeah.
That's maybe the best way I can describe it. And those kind of moments happen frequently in that game, and those moments like make you reconsider and rethink about things.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, a lot of what that game does well, is just constantly get you to engage with its themes and think about stuff, even if it's never like, I don't feel like that game ever like has a final conclusion or like a big takeaway or a big flashy ending. Like, it kind of just keeps reinforcing what it's doing through those moments. And I think it's a really interesting and effective way to like convey that narrative.
For sure.
Okay. Yeah, and I've not really put Nier back on my to play list. I mean, I've read a plot summary here and there, and I mean, obviously that's not as impactful as watching it. But I do see there's a ton of conversation about that game just in the general gamer sphere. So I would say it's definitely been one of those 2017 games to make an impact.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like, I'm not in the camp that like super loves it, and I'm also not in the camp that super hates it. I feel like this game has been divisive in a lot of ways, and I'm somewhere in the middle. But I definitely really like what it's going for, and I think it's effective at a lot of it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I played it for sure.
Okay.
Also, a really neat thing that maybe I really like this because I'm a music nerd. But like, whenever you go, I don't know if you noticed this, Nate, but whenever you go into the hacking mini game, which is like the dual joystick thing, whatever music was playing before you go into that, like, it turns into an 8-bit version.
Yep.
Which is really awesome.
Yeah, it's good.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah. And there's a lot of just like little touches and flourishes in that game that are really nice.
Okay. Well, did you have any other thoughts or any other games you want to talk about?
Nope, those were the two.
All right.
No one else has any questions on Nier?
Nah, I think I've got most of mine answered by the internet.
I want to talk to you more about Nier, but we can't spoil stuff.
Yeah, fair enough. It's a cool game.
Yeah.
All right. Mr. Will, what you been doing up in Greenville?
Well, just playing lots of video games.
That's a thing.
Been doing a lot of that. And then just winding it down, kind of winding it down for the year, working higher ed. So we got semesters, and so every May and December, it's sort of an opportunity to sort of take stock of what you did right, what you did bad,
right in the book, the closing comments.
There you go.
Yeah.
But over the past couple of weeks, I played a couple things that I'd say for the most part, I liked both of them. First of them, you guys probably saw a little bit of chatter about this in the Discord channel, was Deadbolt.
Yeah.
Which is like a side-scrolling, twitchy action stealth game.
Okay.
So the most, I guess, the best comparison would probably just be like calling it like a 2D Hotline Miami in some ways.
Right.
But as opposed to being like sort of a demented dude in a jacket, you are, or with a mask, you're like the Grim Reaper.
Okay.
And instead of putting down like thugs and gangsters and whoever else, you put down mostly like skeletons, vampires, and zombies.
All right.
And it's one of these games where it's very like twitchy. I mean, enemies go down fast and you go down really fast, and you're constantly like trying to kind of think about how to create these situations where you kind of will have an advantage. But it's a lot of fun, and it's interesting because, and I guess to me it's kind of interesting, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about it because it's one of the few types of like very difficult games that I can deal with.
Gotcha.
And I think one of the things that makes it work for me is just how quickly I can go back to the drawing board. And I think, like, so for instance, like I guess I'll compare it in some ways to like Super Meat Boy. Like as soon as you like fail in a level, like you're already back at the start.
Right.
Like, and that's sort of the case here in Deadbolt because, and you kind of need that. Like, it's not the type of thing where you have to go through, you have to run back through something, or I mean, and of course the levels themselves aren't particularly short. So if you die late in the level, it still can be a little bit frustrating. But I think most of the stuff that you learn, it's almost like you learn it in this barrage of failure at the beginning of the game. And
Gotcha.
it's like, okay, I need to be able to do this. Okay, they can see me if I do that. This guy takes this many melee hits. And so it was funny because the first 2 times I played, maybe 2 or 3 sessions, like I couldn't handle it. Like I would play a couple levels and then I just have to leave. And then, like I said before, like whenever I quit the game, I had this little puddle of sweat under my wrist because it was all intense.
Yeah.
And then that happened like the first 3 times I played. Then it got to be where like I actually just played in like these really long sessions and really got kind of engaged with it. But it was tough to get over that initial hump. So I guess that's one of the things I've been thinking about a lot is what is this? Because there were some parts that were brutal, like, but what is it about this game in particular? And there was another game I played called Not a Hero. That was actually a relatively similar game, like a 2D, you die really fast, enemies die really fast, side scroller thing. And I also found that difficulty was a little bit tolerable. So I don't know what exactly it is about it, but that's kind of what I've been spending a lot of time thinking about.
How did you like Hotline Miami's difficulty?
I thought it was pretty good. Overall. I mean, there were a lot of things there were some things that I thought were kind of frustrating. Like I think, some of the boss fights were a little bit frustrating to me.
Yeah.
There was a fight where you actually, I don't know, I remember there just being a big rectangular room, and I think there's like something you needed to know about that fight before you kind of got in there. And it's like the situation where you go in there and then you like die and you're like, oh, okay. And then you have to go through the whole level again or whatever.
Right.
But,
yeah, I guess I was curious because that's a game both of them I've played. So that could maybe give me a benchmark for like, did you like Deadbolt's difficulty, like comparatively to how you liked Hotline Miami's, or?
Well,
I'm just trying to get a reference point for like a game I'm familiar with.
Oh, yeah. Well, in terms of whether Deadbolt is more difficult than Hotline Miami, is that what you're saying?
Not so much that as just like how you like tolerated the difficulty or appreciated the difficulty.
Oh, yeah.
Because I know a lot of times, and you already mentioned this, is that like difficult games aren't really your thing.
Yeah.
But these are 2 you liked despite being difficult.
Yeah. And I think, I guess. Well, yeah. It is kind of. I guess it's similar in a lot. They've, Hotline Miami's got a little more bumping soundtrack.
Yeah, and but, it also had the quick restart, so that seems to be an important thing for you.
Yeah, I like to be able to like really kind of go back to the drawing board relatively quickly and try.
So the next game you're going to play is Super Meat Boy.
There you go.
Yeah, and you talking about that is actually something that I was going to bring up a little bit later, but I guess now's as good a time as any. Like, that's actually been one of my issues that I've been having with Dark Souls 3 is like the dying and then going back to the drawing board is just a little too slow for me.
Yeah, Dark Souls is like the opposite extreme of that.
Right. So like I'm perfectly fine with having some encounter with like a tough enemy or like a tough like spot, but what I don't like is like that encounter lasting like a matter of 30 seconds, and then you are reset, and then you have to go through, say, 8 minutes of gameplay for 30 seconds to try the thing you're failing again, just to fail, and then you're like, you just keep having to go through this same 5 to 10 minute chunk, and you're only given maybe 60 to 90 seconds to learn, before you have to go back and replay a whole bunch of stuff that you've already kind of done. And that's one of my frustrations that I'm having with Dark Souls right now.
Yeah, I can understand that. So that's, there's not too much to say about it. I guess it's a relatively simple game, but I do think there are a lot of really smart things done with it. And so the other thing I've been playing, and I finished last night, was Prey, 2017's Prey, recommendation from our own Nate.
Yeah.
Did you ever find Tommy?
Who the heck is Tommy?
Wasn't that the guy's name from the 2006 Prey?
Oh, I did not find Tommy. No, there was no Native American spirits or spirit realms. But it's an interesting thing. I think there are a lot of things that it does super good. I really wish, this is one of the few times, and I've mentioned this a couple of times, but I really wish I probably would have just, even if I had to turn down the graphical settings, I wish I would have played this one on PC.
Yeah.
Because there are loading screens in Prey. And,
sure are.
And as a matter of fact, there are 2 loading screens every time you transition an area. Mm-hmm. So the first loading screen is you see a big mask. You see your guy, whoever your character is, and then it tells you what area it is. And then when you finish that loading screen, there's a little section in the bottom right that has 4 little dots, and then that's your second loading screen. And those things take, like, between the 2 of them, it's like a minute and a half. Like, every time you transition areas, which at the beginning of the game is not really often.
Yeah.
But towards the end, you start really having to
jump in between areas.
Yeah. And so, like, I mean, I did, I've got my PC and my PlayStation both hooked up to the same monitor. So I would change the source and, like, browse the internet while I was loading. I would go run to the restroom, go get a glass of water.
That's bad.
It was rough. And so
I'm going to end up playing on PC. I'll be curious to see how it is on that. But that's been one of the most frustrating things for me this console generation is, like, I've noticed that when I play stuff on PS4, a lot of times the load times are atrocious. Like,
they're not good.
Like, I remember Bloodborne being one of the worst offenders. Of just like, I just want to go, like, I don't know, go run a mile or something while this loads, because it's just going to take forever. Like, and that's a bummer that hasn't gotten any better.
Yeah. And I think there are 2 in particular which are just interesting. Like, I tried to do every side quest I could find. There was one that was like, you needed to wait for a robot to go at a certain time because the robot cleaned a certain room and the room was locked otherwise. And that was the only way I ever figured out to maybe get in there. And so I was like, forget that. But it's funny because there were 2. There was one called a smuggler's ring. And basically, it's not really giving away any main story points, but basically there's some guys on the station who are, like, smuggling some things. And there are these little hiding spots that are in different areas of the ship. And so it's like the quest involves you, like, getting anywhere from, like, 3 to 5 different little packs of stuff, like, that you find. And there's another one where you're looking at, like, 7 different treasure maps, and you're having to go to different parts of the ship to, like, figure out where these maps, are leading you to. And I just remember, like, even considering doing those quests, dealing with these loading screens was just, like, insane. I was like, my God. So that was kind of a rough thing. I'd say the loading screens were probably the worst part of the game, but also there was a little bit of graphical chug for me in some of the fights, and I felt like the wrench combat did not feel very good. And it's kind of an interesting thing, like,
that's such a key part of immersive sims too.
Yeah, well, it's funny to me because, like, it does the thing where, if you're about to get the killing blow, it'll pull you into, like, a little scripted looking thing, and like I've always felt that like when a game does that, it might even be better if they just put you in third person for a minute. If like when you start the animation, they just pull you out or something like that, because otherwise it almost feels like some giant is like grabbing your hands and yanking you in a certain direction or something like that. Especially it's kind of disorienting when you're in a person game.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I mean, I didn't have too many issues with it. I can't say that the story, which I would love to talk to people who've played this game about this story.
Yeah.
But it's just there's a little bit to unpack there. I will say one of the cool things about the game is that it takes like the bathroom scrounging and it like turns it up to like 15. You know? Because
really is.
because the thing is like in this game, you know, you've got recycling and you've got fabricating. And so everything you find, you can like basically put in this recycler, and then it'll output raw materials. Then you can take those raw materials to the fabricator, and the different types of blueprints that you have, you can create things from the blueprints. And so the interesting thing is like anything you can pick up in the game just about is like useful. So it's not like there's never a time when you like search and then you find something like, you know, when you play like Fallout 3 or Fallout 4, I mean, you know, you go into like a cabinet and you'll find like a clipboard, you know,
Right.
and it's like, yeah, that's realistic that you'd find a clipboard in this cabinet. In Prey, there's nothing that's wasted. It's like, oh, a clipboard? All right, I'll grab it and then go jam it in the recycler and I'll make cardboard particles out of it. And then I'll make, who knows, something out of these cardboard particles, you know, or something like that. So that's a really cool thing. Another cool thing, and I won't give away much of the specifics about it, but this is just too exciting to really hold on to. So, you know, in most games, you know, you've got skill points. And
Right.
one of the things you can kind of do in Prey is craft skill points in a sense. And I won't really go into any more details with that, but it's so cool the first time you do it. I don't think there's anyone who's played Prey who's done that and not felt like almost like an evil genius, you know?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm totally, you know, and I'm sure that the game is balanced with the expectation that you'll do it, but still every time you do it, you're like, ah ha ha.
Because you need a lot of those to if you wanted to like try to max out the skill tree.
Yeah.
But you're totally right that once you've unlocked the ability to do that, it is like an amazing power trip.
Yeah. You're like, oh crap. Cause like there might be a skill, like, especially if you've been scrounging for a while, the first time you get it, you've probably been collecting materials that you could use to scrounge them, but you might not have had the blueprint yet. So you craft like 5 or 6 of them. And all of a sudden you have another tier of an ability that you were looking into. So it's a pretty exciting little thing. I mean, it's neat that there are a lot of different ways to do a lot of different quests. In the game. I think that's one thing that they did really.
Yeah.
Really
I was about to say earlier, there's the place that you can only, or seemingly only get into with the cleaning robot, but I'm 99% sure that there's at least 2 other ways to do it.
Yeah, I dug around and looked for them. I guess I couldn't figure it, but that was a pretty good time. But anyway, yeah, that might be a fun one, and perhaps we'll end up talking about it in more detail on ATACS later.
Yeah, that sounds like a solid candidate for a spoiler cast.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, so Will, did you have anything else that you wanted to talk about?
I think that's it.
All right, Mr. Nate, what's been going on over in your corner of the world?
Well, I have finished what is clearly the most spoiler cast candidate, which is The Evil Within 2. I know everybody is really excited to play that and then dive into its story with me.
I plan to play that. But in terms of diving into the story, we'll see.
No, I'm going to go ahead and tell you no. Don't worry about it.
All right, so not too happy with the way that one wrapped up.
Oh, it's fine. It's just not anything special. It is a more coherent story than the first one, and that's about all you can say about it.
Okay.
Not particularly high praise.
No, it's not.
That sounds pretty low bar there.
It is an exceptionally low bar, but they clear it. I guess that's a positive.
All right. Well, You can only clear the bar that's in front of you.
Yeah, that's right. The rest of the game I do really like, but I also really like the first one.
Okay.
Did you like it better than the first one?
I think so. There was some.
That didn't sound definitive.
Yeah, I've been trying to think about that myself, whether I like it better than the first one or not. And I think I like most of the game better. There may be like a couple of small things that I liked in the first game that this one doesn't really do.
Right. If I had to wager a guess, would that be something along the lines of set pieces?
Yeah, it's more of like the some of the linear sections that are more set piecey, or some of the boss fights and stuff from the first game.
So this one, I guess those moments where you just like shot an enemy with bullets and then you realize that they couldn't be hurt with those bullets. It doesn't have those moments like the first game did.
It does not.
Okay.
Well,
yeah, I could see how that would be frustrating.
I guess it has a little bit of that, but not nearly as much.
That's funny.
Yeah, I liked a lot of the boss designs in the first game, even if, you know, gameplay wise, I know Will had his problems with those. So they were sometimes frustrating for sure, but I liked the designs of them, and I felt like they added a lot of tension to the game.
Is the gameplay and encounter design mostly the same as the first game?
It's okay. So I talked about it a little bit last time, how it has some open world sections.
Yeah.
And so those parts, I would say, are not super similar, but, you know, the basic controls and the way the enemies work are pretty much the same. It's just like, oh, you're sneaking through an open world section, and there are just enemies and resources scattered throughout it. So that feels different from the first game.
Right.
But then there are still lots of like linear sections between those open world areas that feel very much like the first game.
Right. Would you call this an actual open world game, or more of like quote unquote wide linear game?
Yeah, it's definitely not what I would consider an open world. I thought it was going to be when I first started it, because I had heard people use that term.
Yeah.
And you get to that first open world, and it's like, oh, okay, I'm in this town now. This looks like a pretty open world. And then you do a few story missions, and then you leave that area, and you don't really ever come back to it.
Right.
And then there are a couple of other open areas of similar size throughout the game.
Okay.
But I really like the core controls of that game. I think are really solid.
Yeah.
Just moving and aiming, and I think that it does stealth very well.
Yeah.
And I think the core mechanics of scrounging stuff and crafting, you can craft ammo and weapon upgrades and all that good stuff at your safe houses. I think that feels really good. I think probably if I had to pick one thing that I like best about Evil Within, especially in the second one, is the progression of your character and abilities, because you have so many things that you can upgrade throughout the game.
Right.
You're finding new guns, you're finding new weapon types, and then you're able to craft all these things and use other resources to improve your guns, and then you have green gel that you use to improve your character's abilities. And so there's just always goals to get to the next upgrade, and they all feel good and meaningful.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. Do you ever find yourself like overstocked with ammo?
A couple of times, yeah. Especially when I was in those open world areas.
Yeah.
I would often get full on everything, because I would like slowly comb over the whole area and stealth kill everything in the whole area, and then have all the ammo.
Yeah. I remember getting in that state in the first game a lot, and I was curious.
Which definitely feels good, like to get to that point where it's like, well, I've cleared out this area and I'm full on everything. Let's go on to the next linear section now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could see that.
Is there anything like it sounds like you're overall pretty positive on the game, and I know you were a big fan of the first game.
Yeah.
Is there anything about this game that you didn't like?
I think the one thing it was missing were more like forced instances where either I needed all of those resources that I had been gathering like more often.
Right.
There were definitely times where I was just like, okay, I'm full on everything, and hey, here's 4 enemies. I'm just gonna dump on them.
Right.
But it probably would have been nicer to have like more instances where that was necessary. But then I don't know if that breaks the balance for people who aren't as obsessive about making sure they're always full on ammo.
It is tricky because because this game is still in the mold of like a Resident Evil 4 or a Dead Space or something, and I think for me, like Resident Evil 4 and Dead Space, I love a lot, and their encounters really do force you to like scrap and use everything you have, and they somehow found a balance that made that work. And I remember in the first Evil Within, I just always felt like I had way too much stuff.
Yeah,
and you can also, like you've been saying, you can stealth kill most things. So like I remember like they'd build up to these encounters that ended up being nothing because I would either just stealth kill or just use my like overabundance of ammo on them.
Right.
Yeah.
So like it never had that tension I felt like they were going for.
Yeah, and I think that's still here. It's pretty clearly not an action game first.
Right.
Which is almost a shame because it does control so well.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, they focus a lot on the stealth and crafting stuff and trying to sell the horror, right? So, I mean, it's a pretty... I don't know if it's just me. I don't know if you felt any, like, tension from just the scenery or the enemies or just the general air of the first game, but I always, in both of these games, very much feel like a rise and fall of tension, just moving around areas, and it's like watching a horror movie for me.
Right. Yeah, that didn't really... Maybe it's just not my kind of horror, or maybe I'm not enough of a horror person, I don't know, but that never really clicked for me in the first game. Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I should try to think more about it so I can try to put it into words, but especially early on in that game, in Evil Within 2, I was just like constantly gripping the controller and like on the edge of my seat, just like, oh god, what's gonna be around this corner?
Right. I probably would have been more tense if I just didn't have a billion bullets.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of those things I feel like with a lot of those, they really do have to introduce scarcity of supply, so you just don't feel like a giant, like, all right, whatever, I have all these guns, so bring it. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you... I mean, the way you're talking about it, it sounds like you liked it a pretty good amount.
I do like it a good bit. There's just a few things that I think could have put it way over the top for me, but I do like it overall.
How are the load times?
They weren't bad. They weren't great, but it didn't load super often, so I didn't have a problem.
Okay. Gotcha. So, other than Evil Within 2,
So after I finished that, I've started 2 games that I've only played some of both. I've played some of Wolfenstein II and Night in the Woods.
Okay. 2 very different games.
Yeah.
No, they're basically the same.
I can talk some about either or both of those, but I don't have a ton to say. I feel like, weirdly, like, hey, Wolfenstein 2, you shoot Nazis.
I can confirm that.
You got it. You've officially solved Wolfenstein 2. Shoot the Nazis.
Yeah.
And AJ always has this weird internal monologue about talking to a dead person.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Have you given back her wings yet?
I don't know. I don't know what he's talking about.
Okay. How far are you in Wolfenstein 2?
Okay. I guess, is it spoilery to say locations?
Have you gone home?
Are you in Utah?
I'm not in Utah.
I think he's in Nevada.
Okay.
I don't know exactly what you mean by gone home.
I think it would be very obvious.
Okay.
Are you
exploring?
Are you exploring this like abandoned house that your parents were in? Learning about your lesbian relationship from high school?
You could be in Hamlet. I'm not quite sure.
That's. I want.
Have you left New York?
Yes.
Have you been to New Orleans? New Orleans?
No.
New Orleans?
No. I'm in Roswell.
Have you eaten the gumbo?
Okay. I know where you're at.
Okay.
You're almost halfway.
Yeah.
I don't think you should eat the gumbo. Not a good idea.
You are about to hit a string of ridiculous cutscenes.
That's what I'm hoping for, because honestly, like, I've heard so much about this game's ridiculous moments, and so far everything has been pretty flat.
There's a few, like, in that first half of the game, to where, for me, the first ridiculous part was actually walking around Roswell.
Yeah, that's probably been my favorite part so far.
Yeah, there's some really good incidental. I don't know if you spent much time there.
Yeah.
Let's just say there's a really good scene where a Nazi soldier is trying to
I think I know what you're talking about
that
already.
some redneck KKK members are learning their German correctly.
Yes.
And it's quite ridiculous.
It is.
I'll leave it at that.
Yep.
But in terms of like, the really ridiculous, like, there are some good scenes, I think, in that first half, like up to where you've played, but you're about to get to the halfway point in the game where it strings together 2 or 3 really insane scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another scene like 3/4 through. Yeah. And then the ending is also ridiculous. So I would say the craziest stuff is still yet to come.
Yeah, I definitely like some parts of the tone of the game, but so far nothing in it has super grabbed me.
Yeah, up until this point, it's probably been more just like the goofy tone of that game.
Yeah,
like when you find, this is a very early thing, so not super spoilery. Like when you find that the Nazi U-boat you've commandeered and you've had for a good amount of time, that there's like this whole squad of Nazis just hiding out in this sector that nobody bothered to ever check.
Wait, there's Nazis here.
Yeah.
That kind of stretches believability a bit, I think.
Well, that's the name of this game.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, I was just curious where you were and how much you were liking it so far.
I like it fine. I like I said, it hasn't really grabbed me yet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Wolfenstein, and then you said Night in the Woods. Have you really gotten into that very much, or you just sort of launched it?
I've played I don't know, maybe an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours.
Okay, so not a lot.
Which I think is a decent amount of that game.
Okay. For some reason, I thought that was
like
longer.
6 to 8 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there are like 3 or 4 chapters, and I finished the first chapter.
Okay. I am confusing that game with another one. I was thinking that you were playing something that was a bit longer.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see where else that game goes, because so far I really like it as a narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm very excited to see the rest of it.
That's one I want to get to. This has been a strong year for stories and games.
Yeah, it seems very heartfelt and like simultaneously positive and melancholy in a way that I'm really digging so far.
Cool.
And just like Nier Automata, right?
Yeah.
The exact same.
Just melancholy and heartfelt. And
I guess the quick pitch for that game, for anybody who doesn't know what it is, it's a 2D side-scrolling adventure game style thing, where all the characters in the town are anthropomorphized animals. So you play as a cat.
Okay.
Who has dropped out of college and come home and sort of meeting up with old high school friends and getting into silly high school teenager shenanigans. And kind of, so far, the big question that is raised is like, why did this high school or college sophomore drop out and come home to this rural American town? And there's clearly some emotional root behind it that is starting to surface in a neat way.
Okay.
Hey, did you play Oxenfree?
Yes.
How do you feel like this compares? Is it? I mean, from what you've played.
From what I've played, I would say there are similarities in sort of writing style and general tone, without the crazy psychedelic supernatural stuff.
Yeah, because Night in the Woods has been on my backlog, but I played Oxenfree and actually did not really like it very much.
Okay.
So I guess I'm just trying to.
If that game's style and tone and writing didn't grab you, then this one might not either. But I mean,
Gotcha.
It is different. It is totally different subject matter. I don't know if that would turn you around on it. Like,
Gotcha.
It's very grounded and feels like, oh, these are real people with real emotions that I can relate to in a way that I like.
That are also a cat.
Yeah, that's also actually a cat. And then also there are actually just cats that walk around the town, so that's confusing.
Can you talk to them?
No.
Oh.
So it's like real cat to cartoon cat, kind of like real people to cartoon Mario in Odyssey.
Yeah, it kind of feels like that, except you're playing as the real, well, not the real version, but the cartoon version, I guess.
Folks, that's called an analogy.
I thought it was a metaphor.
So I like Will didn't get super into Oxenfree, but so I wasn't sure if I wanted to play this one, but sounding like it's maybe a little more grounded, I think.
That's the feeling I'm getting so far, yeah.
A little.
Mm-hmm.
Is it going into the meaning and purpose of life?
I don't know if they're going to go that deep, but
okay.
We'll see.
All right.
They haven't yet.
I'm trying to pick up on 27's themes here.
That's funny.
I don't know if I need to play that right after Nier, if that's where it's going.
Yeah,
maybe I need a break.
It might just be too depressing.
Roll straight from Nier into that.
Yeah, maybe you should do something a little bit lighter first.
Maybe. Maybe I can go scrounge some bathrooms.
You scrounge some bathrooms, or you can play Yu-Gi-Oh!
There's this other game called Space Plan.
Yeah, you can play Space Plan. That could be
super
fun.
Positive.
Let me tell you about Stardew Valley. All right, so other than that, Nate, did you have anything you wanted to talk about, or is that been everything on your plate recently?
That's pretty much it.
All right, well, I don't really have a whole lot to talk about. I have not been playing very many video games recently, mostly due to the fact that life's just been busy. That's really it. So for me, I've played a few more hours of Dark Souls. I've gotten to the point now where I am. I'm basically at a spot where I've found a difficult enemy, a Black Knight, and I am just replaying the same section over and over and over again until I can find a way to beat him. And when I was talking earlier about, like the stuff that Will was talking about, I've gotten to where I can pretty much master the section from the fire to the Black Knight. And so now that just feels like a chore. Mm-hmm. So that's where I'm having an issue. But I mean, I know I don't have to fight him and kill him. I know I could just, go another way probably.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I got close once, so I'm like, I can do it this time. Fuck.
I have it on good authority that you should stab him in the back.
Yeah. I looked at a YouTube video. I made a post in Discord. Now I see to stab him in the back, and that's what I'm going to try next. Once we get off this podcast, I'm actually going to go try that.
All right.
But yeah, and I keep finding this thing happening in Dark Souls, which I know it like subverts the entire design of the game, but like I really wish I could just go into like a Dark Souls combat simulator where I could just fight a thing over and over and over again and just see the combat patterns and actually feel like I master the fight, because I always feel like whenever I end up beating a boss or a difficult enemy or like a difficult encounter, it's not because I actually knew what I was doing, but because I got lucky. And I don't really like that too much. I mean, there's still bosses that I've beaten where I feel like I did the exact same thing 3 times in a row, but on the 3rd time, they just didn't engage in some pattern that they had the previous 2 and just stood there and died. Mm-hmm. So I just wish I could get into just like almost like an arena kind of thing where I could just play a bunch of those like back to back to back or over and over and over again. But I know that's not how the game's put together at all, which is fine. But I just keep thinking that every time I'm running back that Black Knight, it's like I just want to fight him Super Meat Boy style over and over until I can actually master the counter.
Yeah, that could be useful. What's this is our bi-weekly Dark Souls check-in. Like, how are you feeling about the game overall at this point?
So the thing
I guess, are you like getting burnout?
I'm not getting burnout.
Good.
The thing that I'm finding is so long as I am making even some small kind of progress, I'm perfectly fine to keep going. The thing that I'm finding is the replaying a 10-minute section where I have already mastered that section to that same point and hitting that wall, whether it's an enemy or whether it's an encounter or something like that. That's where I fall off, and that's where I've been stuck at for the last couple of days now. So I guess as soon as I either beat the Black Knight or give up on him and just go another way, I'll be right back in there. Mm-hmm. But I'm not a huge fan of replaying content, and Dark Souls makes you do that a lot.
Yeah.
Other than that, I've been taking Dark Souls breaks whenever. I pretty much know when I need to put that game down when I start getting hurt by like the various little guys that exist in the game world. Like if I can go through the same section that I've gone through the last 4 times, and then all of a sudden I'm losing half of my health to some little dude with a big wooden stick, it's like, all right, time to put this down. Then I'll go play Evoland 2, which is the sequel to Evoland 1. It's pretty much just one of those calling back to old RPGs, 8-bit, 16-bit, PS1 era type stuff. I'm only about 3 hours in, but so far I've gone through the 16-bit, 8-bit, and PS1-ish era games, and it's been kind of fun. Like so far, I would say I'm probably at about a 6 out of 10. I'm probably going to finish it just because it's a nice break from the Dark Soulsing, but I don't. It hasn't quite made its way into my recommendation bucket yet. It's got some cute moments. It has some neat concepts, but all in all, it's kind of it's just kind of meh.
How long have you? How much time do you think you put into that?
I've put in a little over 3 hours.
Okay.
And the way the game is structured is the different eras of time, because you do time traveling in the game. When you travel in the past, you're in the 8-bit era. When you're in the present, you're in the 16-bit era. When you're in the future, you're in the PS1 era. And I don't know if you go further into the future or further into the past. I haven't gotten that far yet. But it still controls the same. And it's not actually what I would call an RPG. I would call it more like an action game. It's a little like a super basic version of something like Hyper Light Drifter. So it's fine. A little like Harvest Moon. It's better than staring at the wall, but I'm not quite to the point where I would say this is worth your time. I figured I'd give it another 3 or so hours, see if I really get into it or the story gets better. But that's really the only 2 things that I've been playing recently because, like I said, just been kind of busy around with Thanksgiving and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's pretty much all of our talk about video games. I don't think we were going to pull news stories this time around unless anyone has a very strong preference.
No strong preference. I mean, there are stories we could talk about, but nothing that's, I think, super critical.
Yeah, I think maybe we can just go ahead and call it here. We'll call it an ATACS episode. We'll hold off on the new stuff until the next time around. Because we've all got a lot of video games to play, and I've got some Dark Souls that I need to go play.
Finish off that Black Knight.
I'm you know what, after someone said just to backstab him until he didn't have a back anymore, I'm gonna go give that a shot. Just kind of see how that goes.
You walk around behind him and he already doesn't have a back.
And if that happens, then I'm putting down Dark Souls, and that's the end of that game for me. Thank you, Cordy, for giving me terrible advice. So, all right. Well, this has been ATACS episode 27.
I want to do the what we're playing next, and I'd like to augment it with what's everyone, at least those of us doing Game of the Year stuff, what's
Game of the Year stuff.
Let's
play before the end of the year, because we got not our next episode, but basically our next episode after that, we're going to be doing a Game of the Year discussion. So we got about 4 weeks, roughly, And we'll be talking about 2017's game. So I'm curious, like, what's everyone playing next, and like what's on your game of the year crunch list, so to speak.
I guess I'll start. I'm not. I'm done. It's done. I'm not going to get to anything.
Video games are done.
Video games are done.
I'm
not going to get to anything. I know what my game of the year, personal game of the year is. I'm fine.
Stardew Valley's not eligible, Paul.
You know what? It's always my game of the year every day in my heart. Nate, what about you?
I'm gonna finish Wolfenstein II and Night in the Woods. The other games that I definitely want to try to get to are Tacoma and Hellblade.
Oh boy, Hellblade. That should be fun.
Yeah.
Will, I know you're not doing game of the year, but you made a co-op list of the year. You gonna play any more co-op games between now and then?
Well, probably gonna finish up Divinity Original Sin 2, even though that game is kind of interminable. And also maybe probably play some more Grim Dawn.
Okay.
Other than that, I think we might get into a game called Everybody Golf.
Oh boy.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's not even co-op. That's just a multiplayer thing. So yeah, but yeah, that's kind of what I've been playing with the bros and peoples.
All right. What about you, Mr. Flex, saving the end of the episode?
Yeah.
Because I forgot.
I got you covered, Paul.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think the main games, I think next I started this a long time ago, and I've put a few hours back into it in the past 2 weeks, but I think I'm going to finally go ahead and just, before it falls off my radar again, try and finish Metroid Samus Returns. And then after that, I think the three main games I want to try and finish before Game of the Year, if I can, are Prey, Night in the Woods, and SteamWorld Dig 2.
Okay.
There are some other games, like Nate mentioned, Coma, that I'd like to squeeze in if I can, but I'd feel pretty good if I got through those three. And I don't know which one I'll do first, but those are the games kind of at the top of my list.
All right, that sounds like fun.
I mean, I also have like 10 other games that I would like to get to, but it's not going to happen. So
same.
2017 has been a fun year for video games. There have been a lot of them, so I'm going to be curious to see what this looks like whenever they're looking back on the years when a lot of great games came out. It's like, where's 2017 going to fall in that ranking? Because there's been a lot of stuff that has come out this year that's been really good. All right, so Flex, check me. Am I good now? Everything good to go?
I think so, Paul.
All right.
Well,
so
actually, before we go, I need Paul to give us his list of the top 500 video games of all time.
Oh, no.
So we'll start with number 500, Stardew Valley. Number 499, Stardew Valley. 498. You see where this is going. Number one, Zelda, Ocarina of Time. That was a ridiculous list. We should talk about that during our Game of the Year discussions.
Oh boy,
it's gonna be exciting. All right, well we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up. This has been ATACS episode number 27. Today we had Flex from Raleigh, Nate from Wendell, Steph from Atlanta, Will from Greenville. We're gonna go play some video games. We will be back in your feeds in about 2 weeks with a regular ATACS episode, and then shortly after that, you can look for our Game of the Year episode, which should be very exciting. All right, guys, thanks for listening, and we will see you then.